Today we're going about the anatomy of research. So yeah, basically the goal is just to kind of make the process seem a little bit more straightforward and easy and approachable. So first, the thing I always like to tell people is there are no shortcuts to research, and the ease of this practice comes with experience. And so kind of the two big takeaways from that are like research does tend to take time. So if you are like me at all, back in my undergrad, I used to be a very big procrastinator. I'm still a little bit of a procrastinator, but I really like always tell people if you're going to procrastinate on any part of a research paper or a research assignment, don't let it be the actual research portion, because it can really take a lot of time, especially if your topic isn't as like well researched as you thought it might be, or if you're just not familiar with the process of research, it can really take time, and like reading through all the articles and stuff, that all just takes time, unfortunately. So yeah, definitely don't want to procrastinate on that part. But then also, the more research you do, the easier it's going to become as far as like formulating keywords and sifting through articles and things like that. So the good news is the more you do it, the easier it gets, but it's definitely the most probably time-intensive part of writing a paper or doing an assignment. So what is research? So it starts with a question, and then from there you collect data, you summarize and analyze it or synthesize it. You analyze it in consideration of whatever your research question is. And then from the analysis, you draw a conclusion and recommendations. So that's just kind of the basic process. And so what are bad approaches to research? So a bad approach would be only summarizing your data, which I think can be pretty easy to fall into sometimes, especially like if it's like your first paper of the year and you're a little out of practice. If it doesn't explore a topic with depth or analysis, so if you're not asking that extra like why question when you're looking at your material, it doesn't advance knowledge on the topic. So if it's not kind of a new or original or unexplored topic, and if it doesn't ask any deeper questions. So again, that's just like coming back to like, you always want to make sure you're taking like whatever you're saying one step further into that why of like why this is important, why we're looking at it, like what, how does it connect to the question? So the first step whenever you embark on any research assignment is to understand the assignment. So length of paper, teacher's requirements, and scope of topic. And those are primarily important to know. One, length of paper is important because if your paper is like a 5-page paper, you're probably not going to need like 20 resources. But if it is like a big 12 or 20-page research assignment, you're probably going to need a lot more resources to write the paper or do the assignment. And also teachers' requirements. So sometimes they do require a certain amount of scholarly articles or resources within a paper, so that's good to know at the outset. And also scope of topic. So for, is your paper a like short research assignment? Is it gonna like lead into a dissertation or some sort of larger research project? Like kind of knowing how wide your topic needs to be or how narrow it needs to be will also help you kind of guide you in your research. So when you're picking a topic, if it's something you're unfamiliar with, I highly recommend consulting reference material first, so either websites or encyclopedias. And this is an instance where I'd even say using something like Wikipedia, I don't think is totally out of the realm of like a reasonable thing to do. Just getting kind of an understanding of what you're looking at. Like you can kind of really use anything, because if you're just advancing your understanding, you're not going to be sourcing it in your research paper. It's really fine to look in kind of more like casual places of information. You can also look at your class notes and consider what controversies or points of debate are related to the subject matter. So, is it something that is like contested, or something where there's like a lot of like debate around it? Things like that can really be like a rich source of material for a topic and research and things like that. So what do you want to avoid with your topic? You don't want a topic that's vague, because then it's going to be very broad and difficult to research and also difficult to write. You don't want a topic that's too complex, because if it's got a lot of different parts to it, it's going to be difficult to kind of touch on all those different parts within a paper, even if it's like a 12-page paper. Sometimes having it have too many moving parts can just make it really difficult to write. And you don't want a topic that's difficult to research, so it's going to be something sometimes that might be like a newer idea or just something that isn't heavily like researched in the field. And sometimes there's ways to kind of work around stuff like that, but it is kind of a more time-intensive endeavor. So sometimes it's just easier to find a topic that's interesting, but still easy to research, even if it might not be kind of what you initially wanted to research at the start. And so finalizing your topic, it should be something that interests you, at the very least vaguely. Ideally, it should interest you a little because it'll just make the whole process less painful. It should be original. It shouldn't just be like a rehash of a paper you read or an article you read. It should meet the criteria for your assignment, and it should be possible to research. So again, something that does have kind of material on it out there. So when you're looking for sources, you want to determine what resources will be best for you to use. So you can look at some of those will be like databases based on subject, and you'll need to kind of determine, are you going to need to use books? Are you going to need a mix of sources? Or like, are you maybe just going to need like 5 articles so you can just hop into EBSCO and get going straight up the gate? And so when you're looking for research databases or other resources, there's a few places you can go. So one is under research tools. You can go to research databases, and we have our list of databases here, as well as an A to Z database list. So this list, if you click on that button, it lists every single thing we have, like everything that's listed under EBSCO, anything else that we have, all here with descriptions. And it also has some open access databases as well, so it's a little bit more comprehensive than if you're just kind of going through and looking at EBSCO. So that can be kind of helpful. And I do believe when I made this, I also put in subjects, so you can also narrow by subject, which is nice. The other place you could go is our research guides, which are also under that research tools banner. And so these are really helpful because they will have a bunch of databases and other resources that are related to the subject matter. So yeah, so there's just, this is kind of where like some of our best resources for each subject are going to be listed underneath. And I also, in a lot of these, and my coworkers included a lot of open access resources as well. So stuff that we don't pay for but is available to you freely on the internet is also there, which is really nice. All right, let's get on. So when you're looking for sources, you want to screen for reliability, especially if you're not using EBSCO or JSTOR or some site where you can kind of narrow by peer review. You want to kind of look at the important aspects of the resource and kind of judge how reliable it is. So one way you can do that is the CRAP test, which is currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And so currency is the timeliness of the information. So is it a new resource? Is it older? If it's older, it could have a historical bias, you know, like something from the 70s. People back then had some different views than we do today, that sort of thing. Relevancy, so is it relevant to your research needs? Is it, basically just that. Is it, does it serve your needs? Authority, so is this written by someone who has a degree in what they're talking about? You know, so things like that are important to look at. Also, like, where do they work? Like, are they working for like a company? Are they working for a university? That sort of thing. And accuracy, so the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. So does it seem like something that has been like well sourced? Have they done a lot of their own research? And then purpose, so why does it exist? Is it trying to convince you of something? Is it just positing like an idea? Why exactly did they write that paper or article or what have you? And so, yeah, the best thing to do is generally look for peer-reviewed resources. So again, with an EBSCO, you can limit to that. JSTOR is pretty much all peer review, or you can just double check that the journal that the article was published under is peer-reviewed, and books published by academic publishers are generally also going to be a pretty good bet. So we're just going to go through the structure of a scholarly article. real quick. So there's a few things that are kind of important to know about. The first is the title and author. So this is going to kind of tell you what is going on, like what the general goal of the paper is, and also who wrote it. So you can kind of see, like here it shows you where they work, which is good to know because you'll kind of know coming in like what their personal biases or like what their work experience is. And there's also usually going to be citation information here. So if you are creating a citation from scratch, that's just important to know, but hopefully you're using citation generators because it's just such a time saver. But it is good to have that information as well because you can see that it's in like an international journal of qualitative studies. So it's probably going to be pretty vetted already. And then there's the abstract here. So the abstract's good to read straight out the gate because it's just going to tell you what the article's about, and so you can kind of determine if the article is even worth reading by reading the abstract. And a lot of times, or well, sometimes articles will have keywords listed somewhere in the article, which is really nice because if you do like the article, you can use those keywords to kind of structure your search to find more articles like it. So next is going to be the intro, and I definitely recommend if you like the abstract, reading the intro first, because it'll just kind of tell you, one, background information on the topic, and also two, kind of what the question of the article is, so you can kind of get a good idea if it's going to be relevant to your needs. And then the social cognitive, oh wait, why am I reading? I've just started reading the article. Background. So sometimes they're going to have background like this, so which is nice because if it is talking about a topic you're not super familiar with, this will kind of give you a good idea of what the background and history of that topic is. So some articles, especially ones that are looking and are kind of maybe more science-based, might have the methodology, or if it's like a sociological study, if they did anything, they're going to usually list the methodology here so you can get an idea of what they did, how they did it, and kind of like how they collected their data, which can be important to know. And then also they'll list usually the results then of the study, so you can kind of even just skip straight to that if you're just curious about like what happened and like what they found from the study. And there's usually going to be discussions. This is where a lot of the analysis is going to come into play, and where like a lot of the questions are going to be asked. So if you're kind of having a hard time figuring out exactly where you want to take your topic, this is a good place to look. And then the conclusion. So I do recommend reading this after the intro before you read the middle bits if you are just trying to determine if it's a good article, because this is going to really help you determine that. And then there are going to be usually references listed at the bottom. And so these are good because you can see kind of how well researched the paper was. And also if you liked the paper, you can go and look through the references and find other relevant articles for your research needs, which is super nice. I've definitely done that before. And so then when you're doing research, you want to make sure you're keeping your research organized. So there's a few different ways you can do that. One is a citation management system like Zotero. I think especially if you are considering a grad program or a PhD, really good to get acquainted with that early. But if you're not, and you don't really feel like investing the time in learning a new like software, I would say you're probably going to be okay without it, but you do want to keep your research organized in some way, ideally in like folders, and just make sure you're kind of labeling everything in a way that you understand. Or one thing I like to do is create a working bibliography. So if you are doing something where you need a lot of sources, then you can kind of keep track of like all the citations for everything and also what each article is about. I used to be in the habit of I create like all the citations, and then I would put like bullet points underneath each and put like the quotes I thought I might use in my paper underneath them, just so I wouldn't always have to maybe like go back to the paper and pull directly from the paper. I could just pull from my notes. And okay, and yeah, here's some of the resources I used to create this presentation. So you can screen cap it if you want. Otherwise, I'm just gonna hit escape. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll also stop recording.